Gosai Maharaj Shri Gurudev ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatarashatashmar Shri Bhaktivedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatarashatashmar Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatarashatashmar Shri Saraswati Gosai Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki jai. Nitila Pravishta Maha-Bhagavat Shri Gokshara Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitila Pravishta Shri Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitila Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Patadasha Raghunath Sharda Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Nama Chai Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट विदाते गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री मुनि देवी कंग देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जना शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। नमो ओम विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्री श्रीमद्भक्ति वेदांत नारायणति नामिने। नमो ओम विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिषे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालय कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तरभक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्तो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतम्। नष्टप्रयेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भगवत सेवया भागवतोत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां शरणन्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षय क्षिप्ताष्टकामदितराङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वां शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। भज श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Dandavat pranams Gargaraji, Prajumna Prabhu, Mantramurti Mataji, Rup Manjari Didi, Raseshwari Mataji, Champak Didi, Madhavi Didi. Dandavat pranams to everybody. Prajumna Prabhu, I don't know anything about that, but on Namrasa's podcast, there was a really great, it was a great episode where he talks about somebody who left Krishna consciousness and came back to it. That was a really good one. I can send you the link to that if you're interested. All right, Dandavat pranams. I was thinking that Indira Mataji just arrived back. Thank you. Nri Hari Prabhu and Bhavatarani Mataji. Dandavat pranams. Thank you. All right, so we missed a reading day for the first time in a long time, but let's just read. I'm going to go through this 13th chapter quickly, and then we will begin the third part, part 3 of the 6th canto, third book. So, Parīkṣit's inquiry about Indra's unhappiness. When Vṛtrāsura was killed, all the presiding deities were immediately pleased and free from trouble, except Indra. Thereafter, the demigods, the sages, the pitris, the bhutas, the demons, the demigods and their followers, Brahma and Shiva, they all returned to their respective homes. But while departing, no one spoke to Indra. Note: Indra was not fit to return to his abode, for he was disturbed at having killed Vṛtrāsura, who was actually a Brahman. Instead, he went to Manas Sarovar to become free of sins. Then he performed an Ashvamedha yajna and returned home. Parīkṣit inquired, why was Indra unhappy after the killing of Vṛtrāsura when the other demigods were happy? So then Shukadeva Goswami responds, afraid of killing a Brahman, Indra had declined the requests of the sages and demigods. Indra declined the requests of the sages and the demigods when they asked him to kill Vṛtrāsura, who was disturbing them. What about the sinful reactions? When I killed Vishwarup, I received extensive reactions, but was favored by the women, land, trees, and water. But now, if I kill Vṛtrāsura, another Brahman, how shall I free myself from the reactions? Then the sages encourage Indra to kill Vṛtrāsura. The sages say, we shall perform an Ashvamedha sacrifice to release you from any sin you may accrue by killing the Brahman. Pleasing Lord Narayan by the sacrifice, one can be relieved even of the sinful reactions from killing the entire world. Do not fear. One who has killed a Brahman, that was the sages, yeah. So one who has killed a Brahman, a cow, his father, mother, or spiritual master can immediately be freed from all sinful reactions by chanting the holy name, even if he is a dog-eater or a chandal. My God, that's amazing. From killing your own parents or spiritual master. That's really heavy. Okay, by the Ashvamedha yajna, you'll be freed of all sins, even if you kill Brahmins. What to speak of a disturbing demon like Vṛtrāsura? Note: one should not intentionally commit sinful acts and think himself free from the reactions because he is chanting the holy name. Such a mentality is a most abominable offense at the lotus feet of the holy name. Namno balad yasya hi papa buddhi, committing sinful activity on the strength of the holy name. The personified sinful reaction chases Indra. Encouraged by the sages, Indra killed Vṛtrāsura. The sinful reaction for killing a Brahman, Brahmahatya, then took shelter of Indra. Indra suffered and was unhappy. One who commits a shameful act and has become infamous cannot be happy despite having good qualities. The personified sinful reaction chased Indra in the form of an old Chandal woman afflicted with tuberculosis. With a body covered in blood, scattered gray hair, and unbearable fishy breath that polluted the entire street, she called, "Wait, wait!" The witch followed him wherever he went, all directions. At last, he quickly went to the northeast and entered Manasasarovar Lake. Indra lived invisibly in Manasarovar Lake for 1,000 years, always thinking of how he could be relieved from his sinful reactions. He stayed in the subtle fibers of the lotus stem, practically starving, because Agni's messenger was too afraid to enter the water and deliver Indra's share of the sacrifice. Note, it is not difficult for Agni to enter water, since he delivers the share to Varuna, who also lives in water. However, this water was difficult to enter because the followers of Shiva were guarding it. Thus, the sin of killing a Brahmin could also not enter it. Indra, relieved of sin and reinstated in his position. Nahusha ruled heaven during Indra's absence, by his knowledge, austerity, and mystic power. I don't know who Nahusha is, though. I'm curious. But blinded and maddened by power, he made undesirable proposals to Indra's wife and was cursed by a Brahmin to later become a snake. Indra's sins were diminished by the influence of Rudra, guardian of the northeast, Lakshmi, who resides in the lotus and who gave protection to him, and meditation on Lord Vishnu, by which he was ultimately relieved of all reactions for his offense of committing sin on the strength of atonement. Then he was called back to heaven by the Brahmins. They initiated him to perform an Ashwamedha yajna meant to please the Supreme Lord. By worship of the Lord in that sacrifice, Indra's sin of killing Vṛtrāsura was vanquished, just as fog is vanquished by the sun. Indra regained his position by that sacrifice, executed by Marichi and other sages, and worshipping the Supreme Lord. Thus he was again honored by everyone. This great narrative includes glorification of the Lord, the glories of bhakti, the descriptions of devotees, and Indra's victory and release from sinful life. The Falshruti. The learned are always advised to read this narration and hear it on sacred days, for it brings active senses, wealth, fame, freedom from all sins, victory, good fortune, and longevity. So now we're going to begin reading about King Citraketu, Parīkṣit's inquiry about Vṛtrāsura's exaltedness. So let's find it. Nahusha is one of the illustrious ancestors of the Kurus. He was the son of Ayus, grandson of Pururava, and the father of Yayati. Final Proverbs captures being engages. Okay, cool. Thank you for that, Pradyumna Prabhu. Awesome. Now I know who Nahusha is. Thank you. So King Citraketu's lamentation. In this 14th chapter, Parīkṣit Maharaj asks his spiritual master Shukadeva Goswami how such a demon as Vṛtrāsura could become an exalted devotee. In this connection, the previous life of Vṛtrāsura is discussed. This involves the story of Citraketu and how he was victimized by lamentation because of the death of his son. Among many millions of living entities, the number of human beings is extremely small, and among human beings who are actually religious, only some are eager to be liberated from material existence. Among many thousands of people I'm having a hard time talking. Among many thousands of people who desire relief from material existence, one is freed from the association of unwanted persons or is relieved of material contamination. And among many millions of such liberated persons, one may become a devotee of Lord Narayan. Is that verse, Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschit Yatati Siddhaye? We'll find out soon. Therefore, such devotees are extremely rare. Since bhakti, devotional service, is not ordinary, Parīkṣit Maharaj was astonished that an asura could rise to the exalted position of a devotee. Being doubtful, Parīkṣit Maharaj inquired from Shukadeva Goswami, Vṛtrāsura, with reference to his previous birth as Citraketu, the king of Shurasen. Citraketu, who had no sons, got an opportunity to meet the great sage Aṅgirā. When Aṅgirā inquired from the king about his welfare, the king expressed his moroseness, and therefore, by the grace of the great sage, the king's first wife, Kritaduti, she gave birth to a son, who was the cause of both happiness and lamentation. Upon the birth of this son, the king and all the residents of the palace were very happy. The co-wives of Kritaduti, however, were envious, and later they administered poison to kill the child. Citraketu was overwhelmed by shock at his son's death. Then Narad Muni and Aṅgirā went to see him. Shri Parīkṣit Uvacha Rajastama Svabhavasya Brahman Vṛtrāsura Papmana Narayane Bhagavati Katamasid Dridhamati. King Parīkṣit inquired from Shukadeva Goswami, O learned Brahman, demons are generally sinful, being obsessed with the modes of passion and ignorance. How then could Vṛtrāsura have attained such exalted love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan? Purport. In this material world, everyone is obsessed with the modes of passion and ignorance. However, unless one conquers these modes and comes to the platform of goodness, there is no chance of one's becoming a pure devotee. This is confirmed by Lord Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita 7:28. Yesham tvanta gatam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvandva mohanir mukta bhajante mam dridha vrata. Persons who have accepted piously in previous lives and in this life, those who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful reactions are completely eradicated and who are freed from the duality of delusion, engage themselves in my service with determination. Since Vṛtrāsura was among the demons, Maharaj Parīkṣit wondered, how is it possible for him to have become such an exalted devotee? Devanam Shudasattvanam Rishinam Chamalatmanam Bhaktir Mukunda Charane Napraye Nopajayate. Demigods situated in the mode of goodness and great saints cleansed of the dirt of material enjoyment hardly ever render pure devotional service at the lotus feet of Mukunda. Therefore, how could Vṛtrāsura have become such a great devotee? I was saying, even demigods situated in the mode of goodness and great saints cleansed of the dirt of material enjoyment hardly ever render pure devotional to the service of lotus feet of Mukunda. So then how could a demon like Vṛtrāsura do that when not even they are rendering pure devotional service? Yeah, Shuddha Bhakti is a rare thing. Shuddha Sattvanam. Bhakti. Rajabhi Samasankyata Parthivar iha jantava Tesham ye kechane hante Shreyo vai manujadaya. In this world, there are as many living entities as atoms. Among these living entities, a very few are human beings, and among them, few are interested in following religious principles. Praya mumukshavaste sham. Sorry. Kechanaiva dijotama mamokshunam sahasreshu kaschin muchyeta siddhati. O best of the Brahmins, Shukadeva Goswami, out of many persons who follow religious principles, only a few desire liberation from the material world. Among many thousands who desire liberation, one, giving up material attachment to society, friendship, love, country, home, wife, and children. And among many thousands of such liberated persons, one who can understand the true meaning of liberation is very rare. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There are four classes of men, namely karmis, jnanis, yogis, and bhaktas. This statement pertains especially to karmis and jnanis. A karmi tries to be happy within this material world by changing from one body to another. His objective is bodily comfort, either in this planet or in another. When such a person becomes a jnani, however, he aspires for liberation from material bondage. Among many such persons who aspire for liberation, one may actually be liberated during his life. Such a person gives up his attachment for society, friendship, love, country, family, wife, and children. Among many such persons who are in the vanaprastha stage, one may understand the value of becoming a sannyasi, completely accepting the renounced order of life. Oh, it's I said Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kashachid Yadati, but it's this one. I know this one else. Muktanam Apisedanam Narayana Parayana Sadurlabha. What is it? Sadurlabha Prashanatma Kotishvapi Mahamuni. Okay. This is a famous verse. Muktanam Apisedhanam Narayana Parayana Sadurlabha Prashantatma Kotishvapi Mahamune. O great sage, among many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may become a devotee of Lord Narayan or Krishna. Such devotees who are fully peaceful are extremely rare. Such devotees who are fully peaceful are extremely rare. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the following purport to this verse. Simply desiring mukti or liberation is insufficient. One must become factually liberated. When one understands the futility of the materialistic way of life, one becomes advanced in knowledge, and therefore he situates himself in the Vāsasta order, unattached to family, wife, and children. One should then further progress to the platform of sannyas, the actual renounced order, never to fall again and be afflicted by materialistic life. Even though one desires to be liberated, this does not mean he is liberated. Only rarely is someone liberated. Indeed, although many men take sannyas to become liberated, because of their imperfections, they again become attached to women, material activities, social welfare work, and so on. Jnanis, yogis, and karmis, devoid of devotional service, are called offenders. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Mayavadi Krishna Aparadhi. One who thinks that everything is Maya, instead of thinking that everything is Krishna, is called an Aparadhi, or offender. Although the Mayavadis and impersonalists are offenders at the lotus feet of Krishna, they may nonetheless be counted among the siddhas, those who have realized the self. They may be considered near to spiritual perfection, because at least they have realized what spiritual life is. If such a person becomes Narayana Parayana, a devotee of Lord Narayan, he is better than a Jivan Mukta, who is liberated or perfect. This requires higher intelligence. There are two kinds of jnanis. One is inclined to devotional service, the other to impersonal realization. Impersonalists generally undergo great endeavor for no tangible benefits, and therefore it is said that they are husking paddy that has no grain. Stula tushava ghatina. The other class of jnanis, whose jnana is mixed with bhakti, are also of two kinds. those who are devoted to the so-called false form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and those who understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Satchid Ananda Vigraha, the actual spiritual form. The Mayavadi devotees worship Narayan or Vishnu with the idea that Vishnu has accepted a form of Maya, and that the ultimate truth is actually impersonal. The pure devotee, however, never thinks that Vishnu has accepted a body of Maya. Instead, he knows perfectly is a supreme person. Such a devotee is actually situated in knowledge. He never merges in the Brahman effulgence. As stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 10.2.32, Ye neravindaksha vimuktamaninas tvayasta bhavar avishuddha buddhaya aruhya krichrena param padang tata patantado nadritayushrangraya. O Lord, the intelligence of those who think themselves liberated, but who have no devotion, is impure. Even though they rise to the highest point of liberation by dint of severe penances and austerities, they are sure to fall down again into material existence, for they do not take shelter at your lotus feet. Evidence of this same point is also given in Bhagavad Gita 9:11, wherein the Lord says, Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanamashritam parang bhavam ajananta mama bhutta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in a human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. When rascals, murdas, see that Krishna acts exactly like a human being, they deride the transcendental form of the Lord because they do not know the Param Bhavam, his transcendental form and activities. Such persons are further described in Bhagavad Gita 9:12 as follows. Mogasha mogakarmano mogagyana vichetasa rakshasim asurim chaiva prakritim mohinim shrita. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demoniac and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. Such persons do not know that Krishna's body is not material. There is no distinction between Krishna's body and his soul. But because less intelligent men see Krishna as a human being, they deride him. They cannot imagine how a person like Krishna could be the origin of everything. Govindam Aripurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Such persons are described as mogasha, baffled in their hopes. Whatever they desire for the future will be baffled. Even if they apparently engage in devotional service, they are described as mogasha, because they ultimately desire to merge into the Brahman effulgence. Those who aspire to be elevated to the heavenly planets by devotional service will also be frustrated, because this is not the result of devotional service. However, they are also given a chance to engage in devotional service and be purified, as stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1:2-17. Shrinvatang swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana Vedantasto hyabhadrani vidhunoti suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, the supersoul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who relishes his messages, which are themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Unless the dirt within the core of one's heart is cleansed away, one cannot become a pure devotee. Therefore, the word sudurlabha, very rarely found, is used in this verse. Not only among hundreds and thousands, but among millions of perfectly liberated souls, a pure devotee is hardly ever found. Therefore, the words kotishvapi are used herein. Srila Madhvacharya gives the following quotations from the Tantra Bhagavat. Navakotastu devanam rishaya saptakotaya narayanayana sarve ye kechit tatparayana. There are 90 million demigods and 70 million sages, who are all called Narayanayana, devotees of Lord Narayan. Among them, Only a few are called Narayana Parayana. Narayanayana Deva Rishadyas Tatparayana Brahmadaya Kechanaiva Syu Siddho Yogya Sukham Laban. The difference between the Siddhas and the Narayan Parayanas is that direct devotees are called Narayana Parayanas, whereas those who perform various types of mystic yoga are called Siddhas. Okay. Patam papa sarvaloka patapana itang dridamati Krishna asit sangrama ulbane. Vṛtrāsura was situated in the blazing fire of the battle and was an infamous sinful demon, always engaged in giving troubles and anxieties to others. How could such a demon become so greatly Krishna conscious? Purport. It has been described that a Narayana Parayana, a pure devotee, is rarely found even among millions and millions of persons. Therefore, Parīkṣit Maharaj was surprised that Vṛtrāsura, whose purpose was to give trouble and anxiety to others, was one of these devotees, even on a battlefield. What was the reason for Vṛtrāsura's advancement? Krishna. Atra na sangshayo bhuyan chrotum kotuhalam prabho ya poroshena samare sahasraksham atoshayat. My dear Lord Shukadev Goswami, although Vṛtrāsura was a sinful demon, he showed the prowess of a most exalted Kshatriya and satisfied the Lord Indra in battle. How could such a demon be a great devotee of Lord Krishna? These contradictions have caused me a great doubt, and they have made me eager to hear of this from you. Sorry. Shri Sutta Uvacha. Parīkṣito ta samprashnam Bhagavan Bhadarayani Nishamya Shraddhanasya Pratinandya Vacho Bravit. Shri Sutta Goswami said, after hearing Maharaj Parīkṣit's very intelligent question, Shukadev Goswami, the most powerful sage, began answering his disciple with great affection. Shri Shuka Uvacha Shrinusva Hito Rajan Itihasam Imanyata Shrutang Dvaipayana Mukhan Narada Devaladapi. Shri Shukadev Goswami said, O king, I shall speak to you the same history I have heard from the mouths of Vyasadeva, Narad, and Devala. Please listen with attention. Asid Raja Sarvabhauma Shurasene Shubhai Nripa Citraketur iti kyato yasyasit kamadhun mahi. O King Parīkṣit, in the province of Shurasena, there was a king named Citraketu who ruled the entire earth. During his reign, the earth produced all the necessities for life. Purport. Here, the most significant statement is that the earth completely produced all the necessities of life during the time of King Citraketu. As stated in Ishupanishad Mantra 1, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena taktena punjita margridha kasasvidhanam. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the that is in the universe. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. Krishna, the Supreme Controller, has created the material world, which is completely perfect and free from scarcity. The Lord supplies the necessities of all the living entities. These necessities come from the earth, and thus the earth is a source of supply. When there is a good ruler, that source produces the necessities of life abundantly. However, when there is not such a good ruler, there will be scarcity. This is the significance of the word kama duk. Elsewhere in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1.10.4, it is said, Kama bhavarsha parjanya sarva kama dugha mahi. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthir, the clouds showered all the water that people needed, and the earth produced all the necessities of men and profusion. We have experienced that in some seasons the rains produce abundance, and in other seasons there is scarcity. We have no control over the earth's productiveness, for it is naturally under the full control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By his order, the Lord can make the earth produce sufficiently or insufficiently. If a pious king rules the earth according to the Shastric injunctions, there will naturally be regular rainfall and sufficient produce to provide for all men. There will be no question of exploitation, for everyone will have enough. Black marketeering and other corrupt dealings will then automatically stop. Simply ruling the lands cannot solve man's problems unless the leaders have spiritual abilities. He must be like Maharaj Yudhishthir, Parīkṣit Maharaj, or Ramachandra. Then all the inhabitants of the world will be extremely happy. Tasya bharya sahasranam sahasrani dasha bhavan santani kaschapi nripo nalebhe tasu santatin. This Citraketu had 10 million wives, but although he was capable of producing children, he did not receive a child from any of them. By chance, all the wives were barren. By chance, he had 10 million wives that were barren. Rupo darya vayo janma vedaishvarya shriyadivi sampannasya gunai sarvaish chinta bandhya paterabhut. Citraketu, the husband of these 10 million wives, was endowed with a beautiful form, magnanimity, and youth. He was born in a high family. He had complete education, and he was wealthy and opulent. Nevertheless, in spite of being endowed with all these assets, he was full of anxiety because he did not have a son. Purport. It appears that the king first married one wife, but she could not bear a child. Then he married a second, a third, a fourth, and so on. But none of the wives could bear children. In spite of the material assets of Janmaishvarya Shruti Shri, birth in an aristocratic family with full opulence, wealth, education, and beauty, he was very much aggrieved because in spite of having so many wives, he had no son. Certainly, his grief was natural. Grihastha life does not mean having a wife and no children. Chanakya Pandit says, Putra hinam grihashunyam. If a family man has no son, his home is no better than a desert. The king was certainly most unhappy that he could not get a son, and this is why he had married so many times. Kshatriyas especially are allowed to marry more than one wife, and this king did so. Nonetheless, he had no issue. Natasya sampada sarva mahishya vamalochana sarvabhaumasya bhushcheyam abhavan pritihetava. His queens all had beautiful faces and attractive eyes, yet neither his opulences, his hundreds and thousands of queens, nor the lands of which he was the supreme proprietor were sources of happiness for him. Tasya kadatu bhavanam Aṅgirā Ṛṣi lokan anucharang etan upagachad yadrichaya. Once upon a time, when a powerful sage named Aṅgirā was traveling all over the universe without engagement, by his sweet will he came to the palace of King Citraketu. Tam pujayitva vidivat pratyutanarhanadibi kritatityam upadishat sukasinam samahitaha. Citraketu immediately stood up from his throne and offered him worship. He offered drinking water and eatables, and in this way performed his duty as a host to a great guest. When the rishi was seated very comfortably, the king, restraining his mind and senses, sat on the ground at the side of the rishi's feet. Maharshinam prashayanam kshito pratipujya maharaja shama bhasye dama brabrit. O King Parīkṣit, when Citraketu bent low in humility, when Citraketu bent low in humility, was seated at the lotus feet of the great sage, the sage congratulated him for his humility and hospitality. The sage addressed him in the following words. Aṅgirā Ṛṣi apite namayang swasti prakritinam tatatmana yatta prakriti gupta puman raja chasaptabi. The great sage Aṅgirā said, "My dear king, I hope that your body and mind and your royal residences and paraphernalia are well. When the seven properties of material nature, the total material energy, the ego, the five sense objects of gratification, when these seven properties of material nature are in proper order, the living entity within the material elements is happy. Without these seven elements, one cannot exist. Similarly, a king is always protected by the seven elements. His instructor, Swami or Guru, his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends." As quoted by Sridhar Swami in his Bhagavatam commentary, Swamyamatyo janapada durgadravina sanchaya tando mitram chatasyaita sapta prakritayo mataha. A king is not alone. He first has a spiritual master, the supreme guide. Then come his ministers, his kingdom, his fortifications, his treasury, his system of law and order, and his friends or allies. If these seven are properly maintained, the king is happy. Similarly, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, Dehinosmin yata dehe, that's Bhagavad Gita 2.13, the living entity, the soul, is within the material covering of the Mahat Tattva, ego, and Pancha Tanmatra, the seven objects of sense gratification. When these seven are in proper order, the living entity is in a mood of pleasure. Generally, when the associates of the king are quiet and obedient, the king can be happy. Therefore, the great sage Aṅgirā Ṛṣi inquired about the king's personal health and the good fortune of his seven associates. When we inquire from a friend whether everything is well, we are concerned not only with his personal self, but with his family, his source of income, and his assistants or servants. All of them must be well, and then a person can be happy. Atmanam prakriti-svadha nidhaya shreya apnuyat ragya tata prakritayo naradeva hitadhaya. O king, O Lord of humanity, when a king directly depends upon his associates and follows their instructions, he is happy. Similarly, when his associates offer their gifts and activities to the king and follow his orders, they are also happy. Purport: the actual happiness of the king and his dependents is described in this verse. A king should not simply give orders to his dependents because he is supreme. Sometimes he follows their instructions. Similarly, the dependents should all depend on the king. This mutual dependence will make everyone happy. Apidara prajatamatya vritya shrenyotamantrina porajana pada bhupa Atmaja Vashavartina. O king, are your wives, citizens, secretaries, and servants, and the merchants who sell spices and oil under your control? Are you also in full control of ministers, the inhabitants of your palace, your provincial governors, provincial governors, your sons and your other dependents? Are you in full control of all these people? Purport: the master or king and his subordinate should be interdependent. Through cooperation, both of them can be happy. Yasya atmanuvasyat sarveta vashagame loka sapalaya chanti sarvabalim atandrita. If the king's mind is fully controlled, all his family members and governmental officers are subordinate to him. His provincial governors present taxes on time, without resistance, and what to speak of lesser servants. Purport: Aṅgirā Ṛṣi asked the king whether his mind was also under control. This is most essential for happiness. Atmana priyate natma parata svata eva va lakshaye labdakamam tvam chintaya shabalam mukam. O King Citraketu, I can observe that your mind is not pleased. You seem not to have achieved your desired goal. Is this because of you yourself, or has it been caused by others? Your pale face reflects your deep anxiety. Evam vikalpito rajan vidusha munapisa sahasraya vanato vyata prajakamas tato munim. Shukadeva Goswami said, O King Parīkṣit, although the great sage Aṅgirā knew everything, he inquired from the king in this way. Thus King Citraketu, desiring a son, bent low in great humility and spoke to the great sage as follows. Purport: since the face is the index of the mind, a saintly person can study the condition of one's mind by seeing his face. When Aṅgirā remarked about the king's discolored face, King Citraketu explained the cause of his anxiety as follows. You know what? I think I'm going to end a little bit early today because I keep on not falling asleep. I'm not sure if you've noticed. And tomorrow, the next half of the chapter is only, 4,428 words. So that means we'll have, it's verse 2. Yeah, we're like at the very end. You know what? Actually, I can read that. That's not very long at all. Sorry, guys. Let's keep the schedule. Okay, so Citraketu explained the cause of his anxiety as follows. Citraketu Ruvacha Bhagavan kim na viditam tapagyana samadhivi yoginam dashtapapanam bahiranta sharirishu. King Citraketu said, O great Lord Aṅgirā, because of austerity, knowledge, and transcendental samadhi, you are freed from all the reactions of sinful life. Therefore, as a perfect yogi, you can understand everything, external and internal, regarding embodied, conditioned souls like us. Tatapi parichato bruyam brahmanatmani chintitam bhavato vidushas chapi choditas tvad anugyaya. O great soul, you are aware of everything, yet you're asking me why I'm full of anxiety. Therefore, in response to your order, let me disclose the cause. Lokapaler api prartya samrajaishvarya sampada nanadayantyaparajamam kshutrit kamam ivapare. As a person agrees by hunger and thirst is not pleased by the external gratification of flower garlands or sandalwood pulp, I am not pleased with my empire, opulence, or possessions, which are desirable even for great demigods, because I have no son. Tatapahi mahabhaga purvai sahagatang tama yata tarema dushparam prajaya tadvidehina. Therefore, O great sage, please save me and my forefathers who are descending to the darkness of hell because I have no progeny. Kindly do something so that I may have a son to deliver us from hellish conditions. Purport. According to Vedic civilization, one gets married simply to have a son who is needed to offer a blade. King Citraketu responsibly desired to beget a child so that he and his forefathers might be delivered from the darkest regions. He was not only concerned for himself, but also for his forefathers. Therefore, he requested Aṅgirā Ṛṣi to favor him by doing something that could help him get a son. All right, so that's it for today. Tomorrow we will read how Citraketu's joy upon merciful Aṅgirā performed the sacrifice and gave the remnants to the first queen, informing Citraketu that his wife will soon cause both joy and sorrow. And Aṅgirā left. So we hear that whole part. Kritaduty's co-wives poison her son. Lamentation of Kritaduty and others. So it's all tomorrow. Jai Shri Radhe. Thank you for... Oh, you didn't notice that I was sleeping. Yes, I kept on falling asleep all that time. I'm good at... If I've done something for a long time, I can do it while nodding out. I can sing Ashtakams while asleep also. Alright. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gantar Vikagiri Dhari Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Jo Ki Jai Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Jo Ki Jai Nitala Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmar Chila Bhakti Garanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Shri Gurudev Ki Jai Nitala Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmar Chila Bhakti Garanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Nitala Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatara Shatashmar Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatara Shatashmar Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitila Pravishta Mahabhagavat Srila Gokshara Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Nitila Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Nitila Pravishta Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shri Gosai Prabhu Ki Jai Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai Namachay Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Braja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Radha Kund Shyama Kund Ki Jai Shri Yamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya Ki Jai Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo Aṅgirā Ṛṣi Ki Jai Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhyaiva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat pranams, everybody. Oh, if anybody, I finally finished editing Sundar Gopal Prabhu's presentation. So if anybody wants me to send that to them, send me your email. Oh, sorry, send me a message, and I will share with you the link to download it. All right, Haribol.